and welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. On today's episode, we are talking about anxiety and stress and really how to quiet that mind, especially in kind of the climate we're in right now. A lot of us are feeling anxious. We don't know what's next. It's a lot of unknown that can really just cause this extra stress that wreaks havoc on your body. And it's really important to have the tools and have the tricks to be able to kind of shut that inner voice off in your head. So with me today on the podcast, my guest is the founder of a company called Resting Mind. She is a life and business coach, and she also has her own podcast, which is called Make Your Life Magnificent, which is available on all platforms. So go check that out for sure. So with that being said, I'd like to bring on my guest, Jackie Ghedine. How are you?
I am wonderful, Madison. How are you?
I am good. I'm so happy you're here with us to talk about such a needed thing right now. So tell us a little bit about your business, though, Resting Mind.
So the Resting Mind is a life coaching and business coaching business, and it's specifically for Generation X women. We focus on Generation X women mostly because we are in this midlife crisis, conundrum, crossroads, where we're waking up and these women are waking up and they're saying, how did I get here? And I don't even know if I'm happy. And I don't even know what I'm going to do next in my career, or I'm being passed over because I'm not a millennial. So we wanted to create a place and a space for Generation X women to be heard because they've been the forgotten generation for so long. So we work with them one-on-one, as well as we have a Facebook group called Just Gen X, The Resting Mind. It's a community for Gen X women. So we do everything we can to kind of support them in any way that they feel that they need to be supported.
And so how do you feel, because with the Gen X, which is right before the millennials, that was when they came in to start their career, that was kind of when men were still kind of running the show.
Yes.
And stayed at home a little bit more. And they had this, almost like this guilt when they left. But some had to, some didn't. So what are kind of some of the things that you run into with these women, like the challenges that they have?
Sure. So I think the Generation X has been told they can have it all. Their parents were like, you can have it all. And Helen Gurley Brown wrote that book. She was the editor of Cosmopolitan. And so they went into the world thinking they can do anything they wanted to and have it all. And then they thought that having it all meant doing it all to the nth degree and with perfection. So the burnout rates for Generation X are really high. The unhappiness rates are really high. And so instead of finding themselves feeling fulfilled, they're finding themselves running and keeping busy and doing for everyone else while not understanding or knowing their personal needs.
Wow. No, and that's true. I mean, it is. And that's the thing, is you hear that a lot kind of when it comes to women. It was like, you can't have everything,
Yes.
Pick or choose. And
we're not at the same time.
Right. And that's the thing too. It's like, well, when somebody says, you can't have everything, well, nobody can have everything, because everything is everything at the same time.
Right.
So, but it's kind of like that whole, what is everything is, I think it's kind of found within you. Like, what's everything to you?
That's exactly right. Right. It's exploring that, right? It's getting people to explore what really matters to them. And I think for so many women, you get into your middle life, and middle life can be anywhere from 35 to 55, because you're starting to have kids, and you look and you say, well, I've lived and made these decisions, or I've just kind of been on autopilot as opposed to doing what I want to do. And then you wake up and say, okay, I need to start making choices for myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what is some of the advice that you give to these women?
So a lot of times the first thing we want to do is we want to get women to break down and really spend time exploring themselves, their inside, and what really makes them happy. And I'm not talking about passion, because I feel like that's a loaded question when women say, like, oh, what's your passion? What's your purpose? But really figuring out, like, when I get up in the morning, what gets me up? What excites me? What makes me feel like my childhood self? And it could be a lot of times tapping into the things that we really loved as children. It could be arts and crafts, it could be painting, it could be drawing, it could be running, it could be playing sports. A lot of times those whimsical things we did as children, we leave behind, but they're the things that actually make us happy as adults. We just don't give ourselves permission to do that again. So really getting in and tapping into women on what they can do for themselves that really make them happy is the first step in kind of uncovering all of that.
And do you feel that there's a lot of guilt if they do that? Like they kind of maybe push back because, well, if I do this, then maybe I'm being selfish and taking time away from children or husband or other things.
Yes, guilt is a very big emotion for women, especially women with children. And we always, the biggest thing we do is kind of break down guilt, because guilt is not an emotion that's real, right? Guilt is something that you're guilty if you do something on purpose with malintent. You're not guilty, you shouldn't feel guilty because you are making the choice for yourself, right? Put your own oxygen mask on first is exactly what they tell you to do in the airplane, because if you're not strong, you can't save the person next to you. Yeah. So that's what we try to get people, and women especially, to understand. And a lot of times they'll push off coaching, and then in 3 months they'll come back and they'll say nothing's changed. And I say, no, because you have to make a different choice tomorrow if you want, today, if you want tomorrow to look different. So for most women, at some point they realize that it's not selfish to take care of themselves, but it is self-compassion and self-care. And it's actually what makes them much better employees, much better moms, much better wives, much better humans, because their needs are taken care of too.
Right. And that's important. Like everybody has needs, and you need to just kind of find out what those are. And I think the way the world's evolved, at least, that we're more of a self-love society now, and people are realizing the importance of that. But you also focus a lot on anxiety and stress. And I want to talk about those because they're so prevalent, especially what's going on with the whole kind of COVID thing. What are some tips you have to help reduce stress?
So one of the things that we like to really work with women on is getting them to identify where their stress is coming from and what's giving them the anxiety. So we do something called a worry log, where we have women write down all their thoughts that are worrying that for them. So I'm worried about getting on an airplane. I am worried that I might get laid off in 3 months. I'm worried that, right, all of these things that women worry about, or anyone worries about, and we write them down. And then we have them actually go and highlight the ones that they have control over. And it's fascinating how few things they have control over. So then we do some affirmation and tapping. I don't know if you know anything about EFT tapping, but you tap different parts of your acupuncture and pressure points, and you tap different affirmations, and it actually calms your nervous system. So when you do things like that, you can tap, and it's a whole pattern, and you can tap your wrist and you tap your I'm showing you as if the listeners can hear me, but Madison can see me.
Go to the YouTube, you can see it.
Yes, you tap your eyebrows and you tap your temples, but it actually calms your nervous system. So we help women understand that there are tools that they can use for themselves that they can tap into, pun intended. So getting them to understand what they can control and what they can't control. And then we have them go back to that log every week to see how many things actually came true. Because there are statistics that show that only about 8% of what you worry about actually comes true. And it's usually things that are very small and insignificant. So getting women, the whole point is, anxiety is a subconscious trigger. So when you have anxiety or stress, what happens is your body actually gets addicted to it. So yes, because when you have stress or anxiety, it releases cortisol and a bunch of other neurotransmitters into your body, adrenaline and things like that. So you get addicted to that feeling. So even if things start to get calm, if you are an anxious person or if you have always been stressed, you will start scanning for things to worry about because you miss that adrenaline rush. So the it's fascinating. So the goal is always to retrain that subconscious mind so that when it goes on autopilot, you're not automatically getting anxious. And the way to do that is to keep proving to yourself that, hey, you don't have to worry about anxiety, or you don't have to be so anxious about what you can't control, because look at how few things actually came true. So really taking the practical side and the conscious side and starting to prove to yourself subconsciously that these things aren't going to happen all the time.
Which is great because it's true. It's like, 95, or as you said, 92% of stuff you worry about never happens.
Never
So
happens.
what it is it's just causing you stress that's aging you and could lead to disease and things of that sort. So, but I like the thing of writing them down, because I'll have 100 things go through my mind, and then I'll feel anxious or I'll feel stressed. And anxious really is like you feel nervous, scared.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll just keep replaying it, and I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? And then what's been helping me is kind of trying to go through and being like, okay, well, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. You're not guaranteed to be here tomorrow. Like, have gratitude. But I do like the fact of writing them down, because I couldn't tell you all the stuff I worried about yesterday.
Correct. And it stays in your subconscious mind if you don't write it down, because your subconscious mind repeats it over and over again so you don't forget it. So if you write it down, your brain actually thinks, Madison has this handled. So I don't have to keep thinking about it. I don't have to keep perseverating on it. So by writing it down, that kind of takes it out of that subconscious and keeps it from going on repeat. The other thing you said, you'll say, I feel anxious, which is nervous. Just watching your language is another great tool. So if you say, I'm anxious, I am anxious, then you're taking that and putting it on yourself as you are an anxious person, as opposed to saying, I feel anxious or I feel nervous. I feel
Uh,
right? Because when you say, I feel this way, then you're like, okay, this is just a feeling. It's not who I am. I don't have to be an anxious person.
right, right.
Right? I could choose to take this and feel worried about it, but not be anxious about it. So, take the language, I feel, and then also take the language and see if there's a better word you can use that doesn't feel so heavy for you. So anxious feels really worrisome, right? Like when you say, I feel anxious, you feel heightened on a scale of 1 to 10, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if I said to you, tell me a different word, maybe you'd say, I feel concerned. And concern feels like, okay, but it's not overtaking my body. So even if you can name your emotion differently, then you'll feel actually physically different in your body, as opposed to that tense, high anxiety feeling.
You're right. And, I think a lot of people with kind of, maybe a lot of people that are out of work or kind of don't know what's going to happen. And they're worried about stuff, and they start to write their worry stuff down. But these are actual things that are real. How do you kind of step out of that reality in a way, and maybe even use like the law of attraction to start attracting like what's going to be good? Because a lot of us right now might be feeling, what's going to happen, what's the future going to look like, what's our world?
It's a great point, because our world, we are uncertain. And so uncertain times trigger our brain into fight or flight. So when you're triggered into fight or flight, we see uncertain about our future the same way we see getting attacked by a tiger. Now, those are two very different things, but our brain can't differentiate that. So understanding that you cannot control what's going to happen in the future, but think about what you can control today. So I can't control if the economy is going to come back. However, I can control how much input I have on trying to get a new job. And I'm going to focus on that, right? Or I can't worry, I can't be in control of when I'm going to get my next paycheck, but I can control my finances today to try to make smarter decisions for tomorrow. So really try to break down what is out of your control and figure out ways that you can control small pieces of it so that you can feel like you have some say.
Right. And that's what's important too, is like if once you feel like you have some control over it, kind of takes the power
Yes.
away from
Yes.
a little bit. So what are some other ways that you can kind of break this like it's almost like a pattern for a lot of people. I know it is for me at times. It's just this habitual thing. It's like you worry about something and then it's fine, and then the next day there's something else that pops into your head, and maybe it's just something small, like, are they going to say yes, or do I have to go to a different place? Um, but the record keeps playing.
The record keeps playing because you're addicted to the stress and you're addicted to the anxiety, and it's for many people, worrying about things makes them feel like they're prepared if it
Yes.
happens.
Yes, that's very, very well said, because I think that's why people worry. Is if I worry about this, then I'm going to help prepare myself for when it does happen. I'll be ready to go. But usually it never happens, so it's just a complete waste of freaking time.
No, and even if it does happen, are you any more prepared? You're really not, because it's still, because you can't prepare yourself for every scenario. And even when something happens, it doesn't even have to be big, but even when something happens, you're still not prepared because it's going to be emotional, whatever that is, even if it's not anything terrible, but it's still going to be emotional. So just getting yourself to recognize that that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be better prepared. It just means that or worrying about it means that I'm keeping it away. It's actually the opposite. To your point before, you asked about law of attraction, right? Like energies attract like energies, right? We are all energy. This is science. This isn't woo woo stuff, right? So if you're putting it out there and your energy is anxious and worried, then what you're going to attract is anxious and worried. And when you go into any situation, there is so much stimuli when you walk or do anything. But if you are training yourself to be worried and stressed, then the purview of what you see, everything your brain will scan for what's going to worry and stress you out, because that's what you're looking for, because that's what you've programmed yourself. So ultimately, you want to reprogram those thoughts and try and get yourself to understand that. And I'm not talking about people with real anxiety disorder that need medication, and there are lots of layers to anxiety, but there's also some layers that we can control. And so we want to make sure that we are kind of retraining ourselves and teaching ourselves that we don't have to keep going in this way, and I can make these small adjustments to try to help myself from being on this habit loop of anxiety.
So when you say retrain your subconscious in your brain, besides, the first step, it sounds like, is writing the worry log down.
Mm-hmm.
Love that idea. Highlighting the things that you can control, right?
Yes, that you can control, and then cross out the things that you can't control so you can see how many things are out of your control.
And then what would be the next step?
Then you'd want to go back and take a look at how many things actually happened. And that's another layer to that. And then you realize there's not, right? All of these things that I worried about that didn't happen. And then you think about, and then it's about, so taking that time to acknowledge all of the good things that happen. So for people who are worriers, our neurotransmitters, our pathways are going to automate to anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to start writing down all of the good things that are happening. So to your point, you said I do my gratitude journal and things like that, or say my affirmations. Those are really important because they actually do train your brain to think differently and to the neural pathways to be different. So when things don't happen, to acknowledge that I really worried about that and it didn't happen. Oh my goodness, that's incredible. Why did I waste all this time worrying about that? What could I have done in place of that instead of worrying? Right? How productive could I have been in my life? How much happier could I have been in
That
my life? Right? Because when you're anxious, a lot of times you're not happy because you can't that cortisol is going and it keeps the dopamine from running and your endorphins from going. So you want to do everything you can to keep your cortisol at bay, so your levels at bay, so that they don't kind of push off and push down all the good feelings that we get.
Yeah. And so when that negative thought or that anxious thought comes in, how do you just shut it off so you don't start going down that path?
Well,
You
I think
walk down the street.
right, you want to acknowledge it and you want to say, okay, I feel, and you don't want to say anxious. So think about the other word. So I feel concerned about I feel concerned about going back into the office for somebody who has to go back to work.
Mhm.
Okay, well, why are you concerned? Because I have to commute. Well, why? Because I have to be on the subway. And even asking yourself questions like, well, why are you worried? And which parts of these can you control? So what can I do to lessen my concern about my going back to the office? I can wear a mask. I can wear gloves. I can ask my boss if I can work from home 2 days, right? Trying to find ways to find out the root cause of why you're worrying, and then see what pieces you can control within that can make you feel a little lighter.
No, that's very well said because yeah, I think it's one of those, and it's almost that shifting your thought.
Yes.
Do you have an example you can share of something maybe that like when an anxious thought pops in and what you shift to immediately to stop it?
Sure. So yeah, my one of my anxious thoughts is actually has nothing to do with me, which is ironic. So I have a daughter who has ADHD. So I find myself having anxious thoughts when she has schoolwork that has to get done, and I automatically get to a place of, we have to get the schoolwork done, and she's going to have a trouble getting all the work done, and she doesn't get it in on time. And all of these worries come up for me because the pattern in the past has been, this is how she struggles through this. So what I would do, or what I do for myself, is I say, okay, well, there's I know this is going to be a struggle. I can't control how she works. I can encourage her, but I can't control it. But what I can do is I can figure out what are the ways that I can make her more successful, or how can I give her prompts about her work so that she can be more successful. So even some of the things that I worry about really are completely out of my control, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make, right? So you would sit there and be like, well, Jackie, why don't you just not worry about it? And if it was that easy, I would turn it off, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
and I think the thing that we want, that I really try to encourage, is that we need to recognize that we're never going to go from anxious to calm. You're talking about two different energy levels, right? Anxious is a high
Yes.
energy and calm is a low. So you're never going to go from anxious to calm. So what we want to do is instead is we want to go from anxious to a little worried or concerned, right? We just want to move by 8%. That's all we want to do. We don't need to make these huge declarations and movements, and give yourself a chance and an understanding that to say that I'm going to get calm isn't real, right? So give yourself a break. Don't put more anxiety on that. Don't say I should be calm, I shouldn't have anxiety over this. Instead say, okay, I feel this way, it's okay, I'm going to acknowledge it, and then I'm going to let it go, because I know that it's not going to benefit me. And so practicing release is wonderful. And that's, you can do that through meditation. You can do that through what we talked about before, which is EFT tapping, but ways to release those feelings that aren't working for you so that you can get a little bit calmer, not go from anxiety to calm.
Right. So let's talk more about the EFT tapping.
Sure. So it is, there are several pressure points throughout your body. And just like acupressure or acupuncture, they impact your entire nervous system. So you would start with your forehead and you would tap simultaneously with two fingers right between your eyebrows. And then you go around, and there are, I think, 8 or so points. And as you do this, you say things like, I am okay with feeling this way. I am beautiful. I am happy. Whatever it is that you need to be your affirmation, and you say it as you tap. So if you were anxious about going back to work, you would tap your forehead, start with tapping your forehead, and you'd say, I know that I have to go back to work and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to do everything I can to be safe. And then you continue tapping, and then you do that a few times throughout the pattern, and it calms your nervous system. And it's a wonderful tool that a lot of people who have had trauma can use, because it's something they can do. You can even do it if you were in an interview, or if you had a big meeting, you can tap. There's a pressure point on your wrist that you can tap, and you can just continue tapping that. And nobody would know you're doing it, and it
So
lowers your...
this, what does it do?
So it actually calms your nervous system. There's an acupressure point right here on your wrist. It's between that vein that goes down your wrist and your side of your wrist by your thumb, and you tap there, and you would say different affirmations, and it actually is just like acupressure, and it'll calm your nervous system.
Wow. Okay. So that's one. And then you can also do your face.
There's on your forehead, your temples, under your eye sockets. There's a bone right here that you can tap. Between your nose and your lip, there's another pressure point, and on your chin, and then on your collarbone is another pressure point. So, and then under your arm, they call that the monkey. But there's wonderful YouTube videos that can show you, and they'll, just like a meditation video, you can do that, and you can say your own affirmations, but it's a wonderful tool for people to lower their anxiety.
And so does it matter which point you hit?
It's actually it's that you should go through. There's about 8 of them. So there's a process, and you start from your forehead and you go through all of the pressure points. So forehead, temple, under your eye, lip, chin, chest, and then the monkey, and then the rest. And so you go through all those, and you do the rounds about 3 times or more, and it actually calms you down.
Wow.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating what the body can do that we have no idea about, and how we don't tap into it because those practices aren't as common, but they're quite powerful.
No, which is so good, because if you're just sitting there, maybe you're, sitting either waiting for an interview or waiting maybe to go see a doctor, and when you're kind of sitting in the room, you can, tap at least your wrist. You don't want to be tapping your face everywhere. People might think you lost your mind.
That's exactly right, but that's okay. Who cares what anybody thinks in this day and age?
Yeah, well, that actually brings up another point. I think that's that's a great saying, right? Don't worry about what other people think. Don't care what other people think. But it's almost like it's very difficult for people. I think we're so programmed to almost like please others.
Yes.
And how do you really get out of that? Because caring what other people think is also another form of anxiety, or that causes anxiety.
It is. It's just why social anxiety is so high, because people worry about what people will say or how they're going to be perceived. And, that comes with confidence. And I think you should worry about what people say if you're going to be a jerk, right? Then of course you should worry. But I think the reality is, if getting to become confident in yourself makes you care less about what other people say. And I think, the other thing that I work on with clients who have anxiety or worry about judgment is, the reality about judgment is that it doesn't stick with anybody long anyway. So think about if you've ever been in a meeting at work or been in class, whatever, and somebody made a remark, and you thought to yourself, God, that was really dopey, right? That was really stupid. You probably can't remember the person's name. You can't remember that it happened, right? We don't remember. If somebody says something to us and we are judged, we remember it. We hold it. We wear it like a fur coat in summer, right?
Yes.
But that's not how the world works, right? The person who said it, it's a judgment, and it's passing, and it doesn't stick with them. So just recognizing and remembering that you're just a grain in the sand of their life. That remark is just a grain of sand in an hourglass. So it's fleeting, it's minimal, it doesn't matter. And if you look at it that way and recognize, even if you've ever had a judgy moment, we all have, we're human.
Yeah.
Does it really stick with you? It doesn't. So it doesn't stick the other way either. So just getting over that and finding your confidence in who you are and what you bring to the table, regardless of what it is, will help you. And that's a confidence thing. And then once you have the confidence, the anxiety lessens.
I know, because you see some of those people that are just so confident. I mean, they don't give a shit what anyone thinks. And I just look at them and I'm like, I am so admirable. Like, you're so amazing. How do I get your confidence? How do I, and like, I have good confidence and everything, but sometimes there's just those people that are like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
And I'm like, you have all the power.
Yes.
The one that cares the less about other people's opinions, as long as they're not doing anything mean or harmful, is the one that carries the most power.
Because they truly are living their life for themselves. And I think if you live authentically, it gets a little easier. And confidence, and I know I work on my confidence. I have a coach. I coach myself. I still work on my confidence, and I find myself a pretty confident person. But there are times I walk into something and I'm like, oh, we all do. We're human, right? We want to be liked. We want to feel like we are part of something bigger. That's human nature. So it's okay to feel that way. Just don't let it bring on anxiety. Or if it's starting to bring on anxiety, start to think, well, when's the last time that I walked into a room and I didn't make a comment that people enjoyed or didn't connect with somebody? And you're going to realize I always do, right? So it's reminding yourself of those wonderful times and the times that you accomplish that, so that you can override and overwrite all of these beliefs that we have, these, anxieties that we have.
So when you talk about building confidence, what are some tips that you have for people that are listening?
So for a lot of people, it depends on where they need confidence. But one of the greatest tools to build confidence is actually a visualization tool. So what's amazing about the brain is that your mind can't differentiate something that you really imagine and put yourself in versus something that's really happening. So for example, if I thought about the most confident person getting up and giving a presentation, and I closed my eyes and I imagined I was them and I felt I was them, I can actually fool my brain into thinking that I'm that person, or I am that confident. So when I work with clients, one of the things I teach them is go back in time and think about one place that you feel the most confident. Where are you the most confident? So maybe, Madison, for you, it's I feel most confident when I'm on stage doing comedy, because it's where I feel like I know my stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to go into a meeting with producers and you're starting to feel nervous beforehand, close your eyes and visualize yourself being that person that goes on stage, right before you go on stage for your comedy act. How will you feel? What's going through your body when you're on stage? How are you getting, energy from people's laughter and people's reactions? And if you do this visualization technique before moving into a place you're not confident, you can actually hold that confidence and it comes out in you. It's fascinating how that works.
Wow. So here's another thing I just thought about when you were saying that. What if you get nervous or you lack confidence in some areas or some area? Let's just say it's public speaking, for example, and somebody has to give a speech for work and they're preparing. Can they visualize somebody they admire giving that speech and how they kind of hold themselves and
Yes, it's a great, yes, because it's one of the best techniques for public speaking is to study someone that you admire and study them. So listen to how they speak, listen to their cadence, and then you listen to 2 or 3 talks or presentations that they've done with your eyes open and you watch their body language, and then you do it once closing your eyes and just embodying them, so that you can get to a place where you can kind of take that energy onto yourself and then be able to present that person that is you, but articulate and emulate some of the things that you admire about them.
No, that's a great. Okay, perfect. So you can do that, which is good.
Yes, you absolutely can.
Because sometimes you watch people and you're just in awe, how they just gracefully flow and things like that. And it could be also a flip side where people look at you and they think the same things. So sometimes how we feel isn't how others perceive us, is also kind of what I've learned. Because I've said to people, I don't feel confident in that area. And they'll say, what are you talking about? You're the most confident person I've ever met. And I'm like, what? I'm working on it. But sometimes how you feel is not what people see. So maybe it's the anxious thoughts that are kind of running through.
Right, because we all want to be liked. We all want to do a good job. And so, remembering why you are where you are. So if you're presenting, they're there because they believe that you have something to say. So be proud of what you're going to bring to the table and what you're going to share, or what, maybe it's whatever that looks like, but be proud of that and own it. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. It's okay. Like we're human and we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay too. And I think that's giving yourself permission not to be perfect is another thing that we need to work on.
Right, because perfect doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. It just makes us feel more anxious.
Although I think my hair looks pretty perfect today.
It does. It looks fabulous.
All that, and I'm like, oh, well, geez, looks like I'm ready to cook a meal in the 1950s.
It's very cute. Meanwhile, I have mine up in a big bun because it's so humid here in the city today that I'm like, oh my goodness, I need a big bun up today. The messy bun look.
Well, which I love that look. And I mean, I've been out in Colorado for the past 3 months, and I'm heading back, and I've been taking care of my skin out here. I'm putting on crazy amounts of sunscreen, but I was like, I can't wait to get back to the city where it's humid. I'm going to look 10 years younger.
Well, it's true because my skin looks good, but my hair doesn't. So, it's a trade-off.
I do good skin over good hair any day.
Yeah, me too. It makes us feel and look younger and vibrant and glowy.
Exactly. So what are some natural products that you would recommend for people that can help with stress and anxiety?
I am personally a tremendous fan of essential oils.
Okay.
So I use essential oils for everything. As I said before, I have a daughter who has ADD, so I am very diligent about putting tangerine and lavender oil on her feet because it keeps her calm. And we diffuse a lot of calming essential oils in our house just because she has ADD. I have 3 dogs. There's always a lot of chaos going around. So one of the things I love is essential oils for orange, lemon, peppermint, lavender, and there's one that I love called ylang ylang, which actually helps create and bring out your happiness endorphins. So it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, what's it called? Ylang?
Ylang ylang. It's YLANG. YALANG twice, and it's lovely, and it makes you feel alive and happy. It's amazing what it can do. There's incredible properties.
So you just put it on like your wrist or your neck, almost like perfume?
Yes, I put it on my wrist because it's not, some oils are hot, so you sometimes need a carrier oil so it doesn't burn you, but I put it in my wrist. Ylang ylang I actually put in my hair. I put a little bit in my hair because then when I move my hair, it smells nice. And then I also have a diffuser in the house, so I'll put it in the diffuser so the whole house smells like that, and it feels very calming.
And do you notice the effects right away?
You do. So it's funny, when my daughter was young and she would have, had emotional irregularity, I used to put something called Peace and Calming on her feet. And within 5-7 minutes, it was like a light switch went on. It was crazy. It just, cause it gets absorbed in your skin, and so it's pretty fascinating.
That is very fascinating. And what about anything that you would recommend to take internally?
I take magnesium because magnesium is calming, is a calming vitamin. So I'll take it at the end of the day. I actually take a liquid magnesium
Like at
uh,
night?
at night.
Okay.
But one of the greatest things you can do if you do have anxiety is Epsom salt baths. So Epsom salt is has magnesium in it, and you do that with a little lavender oil in a bath at night, and it can help calm you down as well. So it's one of the one of the tricks you could use if you have anxiety.
Oh, that's great to know. Because yeah, magnesium is one of the ingredients that's in some of the sleep aids.
Yes, yes. Some of the sleep aids have magnesium. I mean, a lot of people use like a melatonin for sleeping and
Yeah.
stuff, but for me, I find, which sometimes I do because I'm at the age where I wake up 17 times in the middle of the night. So as much as it's not even anxiety, as much as I just don't sleep through the night. So I'm always like, how do I make sure that I do that? So I do the oils and I do the magnesium and just try to quiet the mind. And if you have trouble sleeping,
Yeah.
don't go on the news at night.
Oh my gosh, right.
Right. Write down at the end of the day, write down anything that's worrisome to get it out of your mind before you go to bed so that it doesn't come back up again. Get it out of the subconscious mind. Even if you have to-do lists or tasks, you ever, lay down and you go to sleep and you're thinking, oh, right, I have to do this tomorrow. Oh, I should go and get my oil change, whatever that is. And then it stays on your mind. So anything that comes up at night, write it all down so that it gets out of your subconscious so that it gets released so that your brain doesn't constantly feel like it has to remind you.
No, that's a great tip. And
Yeah.
what about CBD oil?
I don't use CBD oil. I don't, I know enough about it because I read a lot about it, but I haven't used it. Have you used it?
I have. I had a friend that started a product out in Colorado and they had sent it to me and I started using it. There was a day and there was a night and it was great. And then I ran out and stupid me, I didn't get more. But because of kind of how I've been feeling with all the unknown, heading back to New York, not being there for a long time, that it's more dangerous now, I think it would probably be very beneficial, especially in the state of Colorado, to get some pure CBD oil.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. It's funny because I've thought like, oh, that would be another thing for me to try, but the magnesium has really done wonders, and the essential oils are just game changers for me.
Yeah, no, I love that ylang ylang. I never even heard of it. I've heard of the other ones, which are great, but that's, can you just buy that at any health food store, like a Whole Foods?
You probably can. I order mine through an essential oil company, but I'm sure you can find, because it's one of the major essential oils, either Whole Foods, or if not Whole Foods, like a really good natural store, like somebody who sells vitamins, not like a GNC, but a real holistic
Right.
vitamin store. A holistic store would definitely have it because it's got great properties and is highly recommended. It was one of the top 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go buy it after we're done with this podcast. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
and put it in your hair, and
I will.
yeah, it feels like you shake your head, and it feels like your whole body feels like lighter. It's so fun.
Does it make your hair oily though? Because I hate
I
my hair.
no, I just put. Well, you don't need a lot. You put one little drop, and that's all you need. So you just rub it in your hands, and then you pat it on your hair. So one drop is all you need, because that's the
Oh,
beauty of
so
essential oil.
not your scalp, your hair.
Yeah, your hair, just on your hair, and you pat it so that when you move your head, and it kind of then stays with you, so that when you're it kind of keeps with you the whole day, so you could stay a little calmer.
So if you put a little extra in your hair, is that why when people walk by you and they catch a whiff, will they be happier?
I hope so.
Wouldn't that be great? I would douse myself. I'd be like, anyone that seems mean, just put
Right.
my hair in their face.
Well, some people just need to like let go and release their anger, and so they don't know how to do that. So all of these types of tricks can help them do that. But it's like anything else, Madison. You can't just listen to what I say and be like, oh, that's interesting. It's a practice, right? It's like being a good
Yes.
meditator. It's like wanting to learn the piano. It's about, okay, which of these tools am I going to take with me and I'm going to put into practice every day so that I can actually see personal development difference. And I think that's really the key to everything, is practice, and then patience to see how it works.
Right. They always say if you keep doing what you do today, you're going to have the same day tomorrow. So if you want to do
That's
it tomorrow, change what you're doing today.
change what you're doing today.
So another thing that you also specialize in is kind of weight loss.
Yes, weight loss from a mindset perspective. So what we do with clients, everyone thinks weight loss is about what you eat. And yes, of course, if you eat 3 Big Macs, you're never going to lose weight. But but the true goal to weight loss is really understanding why you eat and understanding when you eat and understanding what causes you to eat. So
Okay.
oftentimes people will eat because they're bored or eat because they're stressed or eat because they see someone else eating or eat because they went by in the kitchen and saw something and now they think they want to eat, right? So most of the time people aren't really eating because they're hungry. They're eating for another reason. So they're eating because they're bored or they're sad or they're unhappy, right? There's other things. So really understanding what drives you to eat and then understanding even your snacking time. So everyone creates snacking habits. So what are your snacking habits? And then if you find yourself getting hungry at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, how do you make sure you're making that right choice? And you do that by changing your snacking habits and preparing your food. So preparation, and teaching people that all of those types of tricks. But it's really about why we eat that weight loss matters.
And then that's the key too, I guess. So it's every time you go to eat, you're saying, why am I eating? I mean,
Why am I eating? Why do I want to eat? Like, am I really hungry? Or was my daughter eating something so it triggered me to feel like I wanted to eat something too? Or am I bored? Another thing with weight loss is there's something that we humans get called decision fatigue. And it's when we do thought work, when like us having this conversation and listening and being attentive, we use the prefrontal cortex of our brain, but the prefrontal cortex of our brain gets exhausted. So when we do heavy thought work and have to make a lot of decisions and have to do a lot of work, our brain actually gets tired. And so we get something called decision fatigue, which means like you don't want to make a decision. And if you have to make a decision, you're going to take the path of least resistance, the easiest way out. So for people who are looking to lose weight by the afternoon or the end of the day, they're so exhausted they can't make good eating decisions because they're tired. They just want something quick. They're impulsive. So, understanding that there's decision fatigue is really important, and then recognizing that so you can plan your food. The more you can plan and pre-prepare, the less likely you'll be to make a bad choice. So understanding that decision fatigue and how it plays a part into your weight loss.
so, and another thing too, I think, everybody's been inside for so long and now they're finally getting out and the gyms are closed. So a lot of people have put on extra pounds, and don't beat yourself up, guys. It's all normal.
Yes.
We're all doing
I
it.
think they're calling it the COVID-15, right?
Yeah. They should call it the COVID 30.
Right.
Okay. But here's the thing. So when I was, getting ready to go on some trips where I was going to be in a bikini, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just scale it back for 4 days, and that way I can just indulge on the weekends, and I'd be really, really good. And I'd have these super healthy protein shakes. And then I would get to 5 o'clock and I was like, okay, I've got a certain amount of calories left. I'm going to eat healthy. But because I only had those shakes, like yesterday, for example, I was so good, just had the shakes. And then finally at dinner time, I'm with my parents right now before I go back to New York. They said, what do you want for dinner? And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to Panda Express.
Yeah.
And the whole day I had deprived myself and then just pounded on. But I guess that works too. But it's like I couldn't make a healthier option because I was starving.
Yes, it's so you have to, even when you have cravings, if you have to give in to them a little bit, not every single time, but it's all about, okay, if I'm really craving something, instead of not eating it, and then when I do eat it, I'll eat 5 candy bars. I'm going to just eat a piece of chocolate, right? So that's really important. But that's a great point. When you and then you start thinking about dinner all day. So no matter what you
Yes.
eat, you're like, nothing's going to be satisfying unless it's heavy fat or heavy sugar for some people, depending on what kind of food you like. So it's really, making sure that you don't deprive yourself all day is also a key too. So if you wanted to eat healthy and say, okay, I want to scale back, it's better for you to eat not even more meals, but eat some food in there so that you're not getting to the dinner time and being like, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat? Or making your big meal lunch so that you have the shake in the morning, and then you're having your big meal for lunch, and then you're having something smaller for dinner when you're tired and you've already satisfied yourself from a food standpoint.
Yeah, that's what I usually do. When I'm in New York, kind of on my own schedule, I'll make lunch my the most calorie meal, and then I'll really scale it back, and that's always worked.
Yeah. And it's, and I think part of it too is that we put such high expectations on ourselves. Like, I want to be perfect in my bikini. Yeah, do it too. Guilty. Right. Or we'll look at it and be like, I need to lose 30 pounds. I'm never going to get to 30 pounds. And when
Yeah.
you do that, then you just give up because you think that 30 pounds is never going to happen. So don't think about even the big goal. Just think about, I just need to lose 2 pounds. That's it. And then when you lose the 2 pounds, you're going to feel so good that you're going to say, oh, I'm going to do that again. So,
Yes.
taking those big goals and breaking them down into like smaller little chunks will make it easier for you to hit the goal and for you to stay on track, because it feels like you can do it. A lot of times things feel like you can't do it. You're going to give up.
Yeah. And you guys, 2 pounds is really easy. You just have to take a big bowel movement.
That's all it takes. Or one of those water pills, right? Water pills. Those are good too.
Water?
They used to do these back I think in the 90s, they were a big deal. You would take the pills that would actually get rid of all of your extra water weight before people went on vacations. Yeah, because I guess
diuretics.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you're dehydrated.
I'm not saying it's the right thing to do either.
Then you get the little crow's feet under your eyes.
Oh goodness, I need a lot of water to keep the crow's feet away.
Right.
In my 40s.
Exactly.
40s.
And the other thing too is that I think it's also important as women get older, not to be super skinny, to be fit. Don't be. It's like almost like we have to get the word skinny out of our vocabulary, because you need that extra plump in your face.
You do, otherwise you look older.
Right. So keep eating Cheetos.
Well, I laugh because I've always had a round face. I've always had it. So when I was young, I was like, God, even when I'm skinny, quote unquote, my face looks so round. Now I'm like, I'm happy with my round face. I don't look like that sunken, older.
Yeah. You look great.
Oh, well, thank you. But it's like that round face. It's the round face.
I have it too. Yeah. And that's why it's like before I used to, I look at my college graduation picture, and that was when I drank, 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit heavier, but my face is just so full. But now it's, as you age, it starts to shrink down and kind of thin down. And now I'm like, oh, great. Like, I'll take it.
But don't go any skinnier. I always say, don't go any shallower, like those, those things in those cheekbones that sometimes people get, and then they look older.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of people are putting their cheekbones in, it seems like.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, well, everyone's got to do what makes them happy so that they feel confident.
Right.
I'm afraid. I don't know. I'm just a little too afraid to get a little, I don't know. Don't mess with my face.
I don't want to look unnatural, because we've all seen the people that look unnatural, and you're like, oh God.
That's exactly right. I want to, it's funny, as I'm getting older, I looked at some older pictures and I was like, gosh, I'm older. And it's hard, but I also want to embrace it, because this is the reality, and the alternative is worse.
That's true. Well, it depends on what you believe,
Right.
You got to earn your way there.
Right.
You got to be invited. You can't go on your terms, right?
Cannot go on my terms.
Yeah. So it is. You got to just embrace every adventure and age, and I will say getting older though really helps your confidence and your lack of caring of what people think.
Well, because you become more sure of yourself, and you have more experiences that prove your worth. And so you feel like, wait a second, I'm taking up space here and I'm liking it.
Right. That's exactly right. And you realize that like it's so short, you might as well take that chance. And with the whole thing about chances, you're also a business coach.
Yes.
So one of the things I kind of want to wrap up on is, what do you feel it takes to be successful?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the thing that it takes to be successful is really looking at what you want to do, whatever that looks like, and attacking it without fear, because fear will always be there, right? Anything new, anything that's uncomfortable will be fearful. And but anything worth going after is and should make you a little afraid. So embracing the fear that you have, and instead of making it stop you from taking a chance, use it to propel you to recognize that you're stretching and growing. I think too many people, especially in midlife, are afraid to take a chance. They want to transition out of the career they have, but they're afraid, or they're not happy in their marriage, but they're afraid. And I think in life, especially in business, you need to embrace the fear and you need to lean into it as opposed to run away from it.
Right. And I think the narrative that we used to hear all the time is, it's too late. I should have
Right.
done it in my 20s. I should have done it when I turned 30. What am I going to do? Start over? And it's like, it's never too late.
It's never too late. It's never too late. And not only is it never too late, but why would you want to look back and have regrets in your life, right? You can't change things. So you shouldn't have regrets about things that you did not try. Instead, you should be embracing and recognizing that if I'm afraid and if I'm uncomfortable, it means that I am growing and challenging myself. And that's how life should be, because otherwise it's just dull and unhappy and unfulfilled. And so just go for it.
Right. Well, it's true, because you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, I thought I was too old then. Now I'm really old now. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Nobody's going to listen to me now. What do I have to say now? Nobody cares.
That's the thing, like, God gives you a certain amount of years on the planet. Like, all years should be utilized.
They should. Well, because I don't want to, there's no, not to be corny, but there's no guarantee for tomorrow. And I want to make sure that every day I put my head on my pillow and I'm like, I'm grateful and I'm thankful. And these are 2 or 3 things that I appreciate today, because that's what makes you really embrace life. I think too often people look for external things to make them fulfilled, and it's not. Fulfillment comes from within and comes from who you are and loving yourself and challenging yourself.
Right. No, that was amazing. Amazingly said. So why don't you share with us where the listeners can find you?
Wonderful. So if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so in several ways. You can go to www.therestingmind.com. It's our website. We do one-on-one coaching, and coming up in January, we'll be doing an online courses for people who want to virtually learn and be coached. You can also join our Facebook group, just Gen X, The Resting Mind, or listen to us and our podcast called Make Your Life Magnificent with me and my co-host, Mimi Bishop. And we are loud and fun and really real. Just like you, Madison. We don't hold back the punches.
You can't. Life's too short, right?
And you have to have fun. What's the point of doing any of this if you're going to be stoic and boring, and I don't know, boring doesn't work for me.
No, it absolutely doesn't. Right. It's, life is too short and you have to kind of embrace it. But this has been amazing. I mean, it's been so helpful. I was taking notes during it because I want to go back and I'm going to start my worry log. I've been able to kind of, deal with my anxiety and have coping mechanisms, but it still comes up. But I've never heard of the worry log. So I'm definitely going to do that tonight. I'm going to go buy that yingling oil.
Ylang ylang. Yeah. Yes.
And I mean, just start putting these tips and tricks into place so that, I can kind of calm my mind and start sleeping a little better, especially during these times. So thank you for sharing that information with me. You were a godsend because I was feeling very anxious to speak. So
that's the universe.
Yes.
The universe works together.
It does, absolutely. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your amazing tips and tricks with us. And you guys listening at home or in the car or on a bike or wherever the heck you are, I appreciate you listening to another episode of Next to Madison. And we'll see you guys next time to find out who's next.
Hi, your host, Madison Malloy here. I just wanted to remind you guys to please follow the show on social media at Next to Madison. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, or you feel that you would be a great guest on the show and would love to be considered, please feel free to email me at nexttomadison@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms. And I thank you again for listening.